Hi, ladies. Tiffany Lesnick here with Live Free Legal. Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's Live Free Legal live Q&A. My name is Tiffany Lesnick, and I am not only a domestic violence attorney, but also a survivor myself. I know firsthand how overwhelming and exhausting these legal battles can be, especially when you're dealing with an abusive. That's why I host these Live Free Legal Q&As every month on the third Thursday to give you real practical tools and encouragement so you don't have to walk this journey alone. If you've ever felt like your ex uses text or emails to manipulate you and you've struggled to prove what was really said, you are going to want to stay tuned. Today, I am so honored to be joined by Danielle Kestnbaum. She is an attorney and also a liaison with OurFamilyWizard. Hey, Danielle, thank you so much for being here with us today.
Thank you for having me. I'm glad to be here.
So, for those who are unfamiliar with OurFamilyWizard, can you tell us a little bit about what is OurFamilyWizard?
OurFamilyWizard is a platform. It's an app used as an app by co-parents who are navigating co-parenting together. It can be used by parents who are in very amicable situations, but it's also used and can be extremely useful in situations where the parties have trouble communicating, where there is an abusive person, as you said, who maybe is trying to manipulate the other. So it's a communication tool where everything related to co-parenting is within one app. It's really nice because it allows you to compartmentalize your life. You don't need to be looking at things related to your ex or your, child's parents in email and text and all over the place in different calendars. You can have everything in one spot. So it's a way to securely communicate where none of the communication can be altered or deleted or manipulated. So there's always a clear record of exactly what was said between the parties. And in addition, there's the ability to organize your calendar, to manage expenses, to track and maintain important documents like your latest court orders, health insurance information for the children. There's an ability to do GPS enabled check-ins, and there's even an ability to make calls directly through the app, whether they be audio or video, and depending upon the package, also to record those calls.
Okay, that's awesome. And so, what makes OurFamilyWizard different from just using text messages or email?
One of the major differences is that nothing can be altered or deleted. So we know that it's very simple for people to alter and delete text messages, emails, even phone records. And that's a way that people, you know, either try to skew the truth or in certain situations, of course, try to manipulate the other person, try to make something look like it is different than it is. And so it's really helpful, whether you're in a legal battle or not, if you're dealing with an ex who is prone to manipulation in any way or who is trying to make you look in a more negative light than you should. It's a really great tool because unlike text, email, and other things, it can't be altered or deleted. We do also have customer support, which is different. So for example, if there's some kind of technological issue, let's say you lost your email or text or something like that, Google or other big telecom communications companies, they're not going to be there to help you to figure out what went wrong. Whereas we do have customer support available in both English and in Spanish to help you.
That's awesome. Um, for survivors of domestic violence, how does OurFamilyWizard reduce the opportunity for continued harassment? And I know that's a big question.
Yeah, so there are multiple ways. So one of the things that is nice about OurFamilyWizard as well is parties do not need to have one another's email or phone number in order to communicate rather on OurFamilyWizard. So our customer support team is able to connect them on the back end without that info. So that enables the survivor to move forward in a way, meaning they can have an email or a text, phone number, I should say, that's different from what they had previously, and their abuser does not need to have that. And then the reason that it makes it so that it's much less likely that someone who is prone to being abusive would do so is that, again, nothing can be altered or deleted. So they cannot pretend like they didn't send a message that they did. It's all going to be there. And all of that can be entered into court as evidence because the messages Unlike text, where you might have to take screenshots and try to collate them and make sense of it, whether you're being represented or not, this is a much easier way to have that clear record entered into evidence because all of the messages can be generated into a clear report that can then be entered into evidence.
So when you say report, can you tell us a little bit more about what you mean by report?
Yeah, so the parties, or if they have an attorney and they're represented, they can have their attorney doing it for them because the attorney can have a professional account and be connected and go through and get all the relevant messages. But parents are able to do it on their own as well. So what they would do is, let's say there's a communication problem that happened, over the course of the last 2 months. Things have just really escalated and things have been nasty. They can select all messages. They go into the messaging feature. They click on the icon to make a report. They select all messages from that time frame, and it will generate it into a nice PDF that's going to have all of the information there in terms of who wrote the message, when it was first viewed by the other party. It's going to have Our Family Wizard at the top. It's going to explain which parties are included in there. All of that information will be there, and it's going to be in an order that's easy for anyone to read. They could also do it, you can search by a certain topic. So let's say there was a certain topic, maybe there was a medical issue and all the things related to medical, and you want all of those messages. It's easy for you to do it yourself, or again, if you have a connected professional. And that nice part there too is that we do have customer support available 7 days a week. So if for some reason you're not able to figure out how to generate the report, they can walk you through that. It's not just for password retrieval and things like that. They can get on with you and walk you through those reports and making them.
Is it your experience that those reports are legally admissible, or that the judges, the courts are willing to accept those reports as evidence?
Yes, I would say that that has been my experience. I would do the caveat that if someone is self-represented, it may or may not be more difficult for them to get it entered into evidence, depending upon, what research they do in terms of laying a foundation. But typically, when folks are represented, they are able to get it entered into evidence. It's fairly simple to lay a foundation with both parties being on the platform, familiar with the message, etc. So we do find that they often are able to. Another thing that you can consider if you haven't yet made a legally binding agreement or order is to make a provision within your order, to request a provision within your order or your agreement, which would be basically a stipulation indicating that the parties agree that reports generated from Our Family Wizard would be legally admissible into evidence. And then there's also the option we do have in certain cases that might be necessary, where we can issue business record affidavits. That would make it even easier for them to be, or more likely for them to be entered into evidence. So that's something where they can ask, or their connected professional can ask for the business record affidavits, which would then print those reports directly from the Our Family Wizard server, and they would be notarized.
And I know we've talked before, Danielle, about putting specifics in an agreement or an order, as it relates to usage of Our Family Wizard, and whether that's you're sharing custody with a parent, or there's financial issues that you have, maybe that he owes you alimony, whether he owes you child support or something like that, and you're using OFW for purposes of keeping track of finances. What are some of the things that you recommend including, right? There's some detailed information that you could include in a court order or in an agreement that would help a woman from being further manipulated by abusive behavior, that you could put in a court order as to how to use OFW to the best of its benefits.
Yeah. So I think a great starting spot for any parent and anyone who's listening to this is that you can, just by Googling, you can Google Our Family Wizard model order language, and you can come across a document that you yourself can download and look at. And that's going to give you at least starting points of ideas of the type of language that you would want to include in an agreement or order to make it most clear. Because as you said, Tiffany, the more specific you are, the less likely it is for someone else to be able to take advantage of you or manipulate you in some way. So you want those provisions, which are listed there in the model order language, related to which features you're going to use, how are you going to use them. So for example, if there are going to be calls, are they going to be required to be recorded? Is it going to be prohibited from being recorded? It really kind of depends on the situation, but you want to make sure that all of that's spelled out so that you don't have one party trying to use it in one way, another party trying to use it another way. Then you can even get into more specifics beyond what's even in that model order language. So for example, if there are expenses to be paid and you're going to be using OFW pay and you're going to be paying directly through the app, you might want to also include a provision in there that indicates how long the party has to make that payment once they receive notification, because you don't want it to be like, yes, we're going to pay the expenses through OurFamilyWizard, but if you don't know how long they have to pay it, then a party might be feeling really frustrated that every time they enter an expense to be paid, it just goes on and on. So you want to just be
Right.
thinking about being as specific as possible so that you can avoid, more or less opportunities for the other party to try to take advantage of you or to try to frustrate you or to try to, you know, get you to back away.
Right. Yeah. And especially for a situation where you have joint legal custody, right? You have to make decisions together, where clearly that's not really possible to do. And you have a parent who's just non-responsive. So an important decision needs to be made. You've reached out to that parent and they're just not responding. Right. Or they're responding in a way that's just not conducive to productive conversation. It'd be good to have something in there that says, you must check OFW every 24 hours, or a time frame, so that if you had to go back to court later, you could show the court, look, I am, trying to involve this other parent in these very important discussions about our child's health, education, therapy, and they're just not responding. They're required to check OFW every 24 hours. They're not doing it, or they are doing it and they're just not participating in those conversations. I need to have sole legal custody or sole decision making authority. So is it possible through OFW that we're able to show the court, when messages are being received or read and then not responded to?
Yes, absolutely. So those are all important factors and things to consider to include in your agreement or order in terms of how often will they be required to check OurFamilyWizard. Typically, people are going to be indicating that they're going to use push notifications, which means they're going to be getting a notification in real time. And then you want to indicate, they have to respond within a reasonable time or a couple hours, couple days. It really kind of depends on the situation. If it's a long distance situation and there's no urgent matter, maybe there's more time for leeway or whatever, but you want to spell that out. And then yes, OurFamilyWizard will make it easy to be able to show that the parents are or are not really working in a genuine way to try to include the other parents. Because, for example, not only would the messages show any messages that they sent, it will show when it was first viewed. So if, for example, you send a message, they cannot opt out of read receipt. So you send a message and they view it and they see that you ask them a question about whether you think, the child should get braces. Let's say, the orthodontist said X, Y, and Z. We have 2 weeks to make a decision. I'd like your input. There's going to be evidence there that they cannot get rid of, this timestamp that's going to show that they viewed the message. And if they fail to respond, and they're consistently failing to respond, that's showing that you're doing your duty to keep them informed, to seek their input, and they are not responding. In addition, if you have in your agreement or order, for example, and you want to show that you are trying to include the other parent, let's say, for example, in doctor visits, you are able to show when you put that on the calendar. So same thing, if you have someone you're dealing with who's manipulative in the other way, they're not going to be able to skirt around that, because they can't say that they told you about the doctor appointment when they put it on the calendar and it shows that it was put on the calendar 10 minutes before the doctor appointment happened. They also
Right.
can't enter events that have already happened. So they can't make it look like they had put it on the calendar, because once that time passes, they can no longer put an event on the calendar.
Right. No. And I've used that feature so many times, just to show manipulation, right, by an abusive partner, show when things were entered or when things were viewed. I've used those reports and you get like those little, I think there's like a blue dot for like husband, and then wife has or mom
Yeah,
has a
depending
different
what color they
color.
choose. Yeah, they get to choose their color, so you can see that
Yeah.
clearly.
Yeah. So that's great. And then we did have a question about the tone meter. So can the attorneys see the tone meter after messages have been sent? For example, when he sends me messages, I know the red bars must come up on the bottom to show that tone was negative. but he sends the message anyway. So if the tone meters, tell us first of all what the tone meter is.
Sure.
And then once it's activated, are you still able to send messages even though OFW maybe's instructed you not to?
Yeah, so tone meter works in real time as the parties are typing out their message to tell them that what they've written is negative. It will give specifics about like which sentence specifically is negative. It does not stop them from sending it. And to answer the question, it also is not going to tell the attorney. The way that people work around that is that you as a parent, let's say you receive a message and the message is nasty and you're confident that if they had the tone meter turned on, because everyone has access to tone meter, but they do have to activate it within their account, but you're confident that if tone meter were on, it would have been picked up as negative. What you can do is you can type out that same message as if you're going to send it to your co-parent, but not actually send it, and you will see whether or not it's picking up the negatives, and you can take a screenshot of that and share that with your attorney. That's a way around that people have done. And some attorneys might have, they can't see it on their professional account, but there are some attorneys who either use Our Family Wizard personally, like in their personal co-parenting relationship, or they choose to pay for an account just to be able to test out things like that themselves. But really, you can do that by typing out that same message that they sent to you without actually hitting send and showing that the tone meter was activated.
Okay. Um, does OFW have tools that can help survivors feel less anxious when they need to send a message?
To make them feel less anxious. I guess it depends what they're feeling anxious about. So if they're concerned that what they're writing might be perceived in a negative way, we do have tone meter AI, so they can get suggestions for how to reword that. So that tool is available. Other than that, it really, again, it depends why they're feeling anxious. I'm not sure what
Okay,
else
but
to do.
they could use the tone meter, which would let them know, hey, this
Yeah.
maybe is not the best thing to send. And
And
then
would
you
also
do
give
have,
them suggestion because we have an AI feature as well. So not only would it say this is negative, but they can click to view a suggestion and they can ask for multiple suggestions. So if they want to, just get a little experiment with what are different ways I could say this, and they can do that.
what makes Our Family Wizard different from the other communication apps that are out there?
I would say there are a few different things because there are different apps and they are each slightly different. One of the main things is that Our Family Wizard has been around for more than 20 years. So we've really invested in the infrastructure and are constantly upgrading the platform. We do not sell our data. We do not delete messages. Some of the other apps, the parties are able to delete their account, which really defeats the purpose because even if they're told not to, once they delete it and the other parent decides to delete it as well, all those messages are gone. So the record that you were looking for is no longer there. That's not an option with Our Family Wizard. Not only can parents not delete it, but we don't delete it. Some of the other apps reserve the right to delete all the information after 6 months of inactivity. But there have been many instances where, for example, parties were using Our Family Wizard and they were using it for a period of time. Then let's say after 2 or 3 years, they stop using it. And 6 months later, an issue arises and the messages related to that are on Our Family Wizard. With other apps, those messages could be gone, but with Our Family Wizard, they can just reactivate their subscription and gain access to it. Then also, at least one of the other apps does not have the ability for a professional to be connected. So if you want to have a guardian ad litem or an
Mhm.
attorney or anyone connected, that's not an option. And then with the other one that does allow attorney access, it's much more clunky in that they are not able um, to work as they would like. They have to constantly check in with the parent to see if they can gain access to this part of the
Right.
app or that part of the app. And then also, I would say that they don't have, ours is the most robust, where we have all of the features that the others don't. They have some of ours, some, one has some of ours, and the other has some others of ours, but we have all of them, including GPS enabled check-ins, tone meter AI, things that aren't available on the other apps.
Right,
And
right.
we have transparency in pricing. So you know exactly what the price is. Some folks will qualify for a fee waiver, but if you don't, you know exactly what the price is. There's not added costs that come up later on, which has been a problem with some of the other apps where they think they're getting it for free, but then they need to use a certain feature within it, and that one actually costs money.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I love the way that you can print out messaging in OFW. And you're, I can get access to my clients' Our Family Wizard account as a professional. And so I can just go in and get exactly what I need. You can search by word, you can search by phrases, you can search by date. It makes it very, very easy. And then I can just download or print the exact emails that I need versus going into Google or Gmail and then having to print out page after page after page after page of non-relevant communications just to get to the one that I need.
Exactly.
Um, so that, yeah, that makes OFW beautiful, and it saves folks a lot of time or a lot of money in attorney's fees because their attorney doesn't have to spend as much time looking for that critical evidence that's going to make or break their case, right? If I have to sit and go through hundreds of pages of Gmail communications between you both to find like that, um, you know, perfect piece of evidence, that's going to be thousands of dollars for you as the client of my time versus OFW. I can go in and I can search for a keyword and it's going to pull up every single message that has that word. And then I can just print out every single one of those messages. So it's a beautiful feature versus some of my other clients who have like App Close or Talking Parents. I don't have professional access to those apps. I can't get professional access. And then I have to wait for my client to download those communications and provide those to me. And if there's a deadline or a trial, and you don't get any of those messages until 24, 48 hours before your hearing, that's going to have a negative impact on your case. Plus, those apps don't allow you to just print out those individual emails. They usually batch, like you get all the emails. So I'll get like 300 pages of emails all in one that I've got to like parse through. So the features on OFW they're well worth the money, and the cost of OFW is really nominal in comparison to what you receive, the benefits that you receive, I think, from a legal perspective. Um, so can other professionals other than attorneys access their clients, Our Family
Yes, so
Wizard?
sometimes guardians ad litem, which sometimes are attorneys, but sometimes they're mental health professionals or lay people. They do sometimes have professional accounts. Also, there are plenty of mental health professionals who have professional accounts. There are parenting coordinators who have professional accounts, depending what jurisdiction you're in. But there can be a therapist for just one parent or parenting coaches who want to go in and see the way that the parties are communicating with one another. So there are various types of professionals definitely who gain access to Our Family Wizard.
Yeah. And Brianne online. Hi, Brianne. Good to see you. Good to see you also, Sarah and Deborah. Um, Brianne says she uses the journal a lot now instead of just sending him messages. What's one way that they can use the journal feature that can help them have
Well,
a
there are
positive
multiple. There's
outcome?
the GPS enabled check-ins there, which could be helpful sometimes in certain issues with domestic violence as well. If, for example, you can have the abusive person be required to check in, let's say, 3 blocks away, that they're already out of the area, so they're out of the area of wherever they're exchanging the child. Let's say they have a third party exchanging it. They would be able to show this GPS enabled check-in so that the partner who has been abused is able to have the peace of mind that I can see where he is. He's far away from where I am now, and I can go in and get the child or whatever. So that is definitely one way. And then what was the other question for the journal, besides GPS enabled check-ins, also it can use that to show places that the child enjoys, for example, or in positive ways to share moments. Like a child went to a birthday party, let's say one of the parties gets access to pictures from the child's parents, the other child's parents. They can share and they can tag themselves at that location, show, Danielle really enjoyed this party at Chuck E. Cheese or whatever, and they don't have to be there at that time. It's just a good way it can be to share positive moments to help the other party still feel a bit connected, depending on the situation and how old the child is and things like that.
Yeah. Um, what if a dad says, like, I never knew about a recital or an appointment? How can OFW prove that he did?
They can show when they entered the report on the calendar. I'm not the report. When they put the event on the calendar, so let's say the recital was today, September 18th, right? They would be able to show not only that they put it on the calendar on September 10th, but they're able to show when that dad last viewed the calendar. So let's say that it shows that the event was created on September 10th, and it will also show when dad viewed the calendar. So if he's again required to be going in every day and checking the features, he would have gotten a notification, and then it will show, oh, dad viewed the calendar on September 12th, which would have been after it was already put on. And so you can show that way.
And is that something you can print out to take
You
to the
can print
court?
out you'd be able to print out you can definitely print out the calendar. You can make a report of they're basically notification messages. So yeah.
Okay. Yeah, and I've done that before too. You can actually show when an appointment was put on the calendar, what time, what day, and who put the appointment
Yeah.
on the calendar. And I've done that too. How what about for financial abuse? Because I do want to talk about that as well. So one tactic we see a lot is an abuser saying, I already paid that, or you never sent me the receipt. So I don't have an obligation to reimburse you or pay you for that. So how does our family wizard prevent those kinds of excuses?
Well, it's really nice because all that is tracked and documented as well. So again, if you set up your agreement or order to indicate that you're going to use expenses through Our Family Wizard and or are going to use OFW Pay, which allows you to directly pay within the app, making it even more clear. But either way, even if you're not using OFW Pay, there's always going to be that ability to show the expense to take a picture on the go. So you incur an expense, you get a receipt, you can take a picture of it, upload it, and that attachment is going to be there. So it's going to show it's all in one place. Again, it's not, the other problem with, using Gmail and things like that is like someone can claim that something was deleted when it really wasn't. And then you're trying to prove like a negative, right? But with Our Family Wizard, that's not an option. So you'd be able to see that the expense was entered and that a receipt was attached, and you would know exactly what day that was. And then again, if you have it outlined in terms of how long they have to get back to you with that reimbursement, and then again, if you have OFW Pay, not only would you have the receipt there and the time that you sought reimbursement, but when they do pay you, you'll know it will show the time that they paid and what four digits of the bank account it left from, where it went to, so that you'd be able to show, well, yes, they paid, but they paid it, 4 weeks after they were supposed to, or something like that.
Right. So you can use it to establish a habitual failure to pay on time
Yeah.
or
You
late
would be able to
payments.
show regularly, like if, for example, their agreement or order said that they have, 2 weeks from the date of receipt to reimburse, you'd be able to show that, here are these 10 different expenses where the receipt was submitted on this date and payment was given 5 weeks after, or whatever the case may be.
Right, right. And are you able to upload those receipts into our family wizard?
Yes, you can.
Okay. And then that provides notice to him and it
Yep.
shows the date when they were uploaded. So
Yep.
it's hard for him to come back and say never.
Exactly. They get those notification messages too, that show an expense was entered and when.
Got you. That's awesome. That's an awesome feature. And you mentioned OFW Pay. Is that a feature within OFW that allows for women to receive their support payments directly through OFW?
Yes, so if they have a subscription package that allows it and both parties sign up for a package that allows OFW Pay, then they can send and receive payments directly through Our Family Wizard. We use bank level security vendors to connect on the back end. It's Dwala and Plaid. They're the same vendors who do Venmo. So it works very similarly, and it's an added convenience. And also, again, in a lot of cases, it's very important to have that added documentation. So not only is it convenient, but it also adds that extra level of transparency where the last four digits of the bank account, where the money left from, where it went to, and when.
Right, right. And does it help track? Can OFW help women track what support is still owed? What's been paid, but what is still outstanding in cases
Yes, it
of
does.
contempt?
It keeps essentially a ledger and it shows how much each party owes the other party.
Okay. And I know there have been a couple of comments in the chat about I had posted a question about, kind of what things concern you the most in interacting with your abusive ex. And women have really expressed being concerned about messing up in court, with court procedures and protocol, especially if they're pro se or they're representing themselves, and then him having more money to outspend her in the legal system. And so, how how is OFW? I think this is an important question because how is OFW viewed by the court system? Is it a sanctioned communication app that's recognized by the judges as kind of a credible service?
Yes, in my experience, it definitely is. It is court ordered and used by agreement in all 50 states in the US. It's also court ordered and used by agreement in Canada, in the UK, in Australia, and in New Zealand. There are also other users in other places, but I don't know, if the courts are involved or if those were orders entered in the US, for example, where one of the parties moved overseas or something like that. Certainly, there are some military stationed overseas who are using it in other places, but in all of the US and those other countries mentioned, it is used by court order and also by agreement, and it is definitely considered the gold standard. And one thing that I would say in terms of, I certainly get the anxiety that comes with litigating in general, and certainly it's going to be heightened if someone is self-represented. If for any of those, I would suggest, things like this, having tools like this where you connect with a professional who can give you some advice. And then also it's an option to look at legal aid websites for some assistance with how to get things entered into evidence. But I would say that if someone's going to be self-represented, they are going to have at least a small leg up and the ability to enter things if they do have Our Family Wizard, as opposed to just trying to enter texts and emails, which is nearly impossible. I mean, it's hard enough for attorneys to try to do it. It's going to be a lot harder for a self-represented litigant to try to do that, to get them in a way that they will be entered into evidence if the other party puts up any kind of resistance. So the ability of being able to have these in reports that typically can be court admissible would be certainly to their advantage, or even the ability, if they need to get a business record affidavit.
Yeah. And I know more and more frequently when I'm in court, I'll have judges say, is this from OFW? And if the answer to that question is yes, they're like, it's coming in. They're not questioning that it's an OFW communication calendar, journal, expense ledger, whatever it might be. They're just recognizing as if it's coming from OFW, then I believe this to be valid or truthful information evidence. So if you are representing yourself or you feel like your ex has got the better attorney, I think using OFW evidence, again, nominal cost in comparison to what you would spend legally hiring a really expensive attorney or whatnot, is a way to get evidence in, whether it's financial in nature or you're going up against the custody battle. You might be able to get some of those things in much, much easier. And it's more organized too. So your judge is going to be able to process that information in a much more concise manner too than just a bunch of random exhibits that you're trying to get admitted. And I know we had talked about a customer service that's available to folks who subscribe to OFW. For people that are representing themselves, what types of things would customer service be available to help them with?
They can help them generate those reports. So for example, if they're, obviously the support person is not going to know what they should include in their report, but as long as they decide what they want. So let's say well, I want all messages since last modification of child custody. I don't quite remember how to make the report. They can do that. If they need to get a business record affidavit, they can ask them for that. If they don't remember how to see on the calendar, when something was entered, they can ask them for them to show that piece to them. And I would say, like, picking up on what you were saying before too, if you are self-represented, whether the other party is self-represented or not, having OFW as the source of information leaves less room for the other side to try to muddy the waters, because again, they can try to bring up that, oh, those emails or texts, it's because some of them were deleted, or it's because they're in this other order. But the judges have such familiarity with Our Family Wizard that they know that that's not an option. So the other party is not going to be able to say, again, whether by attorney or someone else, well, they just deleted some of the message on Our Family Wizard, or they're only showing you part of it, because they know that that's not an option.
Right. And just to reemphasize again, you said this at the beginning of the live, but for folks who are joining us later, you cannot delete communications in OFW, correct?
They cannot
Okay.
delete them, and we don't delete them either. So they are always there.
Okay. What about altering communications?
Once it's been sent, no. As you're typing, for example, if you use Tone Meter and you decide you want to edit it or you want to use a suggestion that's been given by the AI, you can, but once you send it, it cannot be altered. And similarly, you can change events on the calendar until they've happened, because like let's say there is a change in what's going on. But once that time frame comes, you can't make any changes. So again, you can't go put an event and make it look like it was on the calendar, even though it already happened, or you can't go and erase an event that you had said did happen.
Right, right. And I just wanted to explain from a legal perspective, Danielle keeps talking about a business records affidavit, to call customer service to get a business records affidavit. And some of our viewers out there, many of our viewers out there might be like, what is a business records affidavit? What the heck is that? And basically, there is an exception in the hearsay rules of evidence for business records to come in as long as they're certified. So if you have a certification on top of the business records, many times you can get those business records admitted. And of course, all the reports that are generated in OFW or anything that's generated in OFW would be considered a business records. You just need that certification. And so that affidavit is that document that would certify that the records are coming directly from OFW. And that should be an easy way just to get those admitted into evidence under a hearsay exception. So that's what she's talking about as far as the affidavit goes. So we have another question. This one comes from Caitlin. Hey, Caitlin, so glad to see you. X only wants to use a free app. There are a number of reasons that I like OFW better. Is there anything you can provide the court to mandate OFW instead of another app?
I would say no. Unfortunately, there's nothing that we can do that's going to make the court choose. There are some courts that prefer. I would say most judges I've encountered in various jurisdictions prefer our Family Wizard. And to be completely honest, there are some who just think that's up to the parent. Like they're not going to get involved, even if they do like our Family Wizard better. They just want them using a co-parenting app, so they're typically not gonna, intervene necessarily. I would say the way that I would try to go at it would be either if anyone might qualify for a fee waiver, which we have and the other apps don't have. App Close, which has been historically free, is now charging for recordings. Talking Parents charges for reports and other things that parents end up using. So you know, I would argue myself as a parent, if I were self-represented to the court, that there are costs associated with those apps. They're just not upfront, so that you don't want to be on the hook for those costs. And then also what I would try to do if I were representing myself I would try to come up with one of the features that our Family Wizard has and make it an important part of your case and point out that the other app doesn't have that. So let's say, for example, you think that the GPS enabled check-in is a really relevant feature for you. You would indicate that the other app that they want to use doesn't have that. So I would just go in and look and try to compare the different apps and come up with the part that they don't have that our Family Wizard does have. And then again, the fact that there are costs associated with those apps are just not as transparent.
Are some of the critical functions of our Family Wizard that the other apps don't have? Like if they had to make an argument to really advocate for
Oh,
OFW use.
yeah, there's the GPS enabled check-in. There's the enhanced professional access. There's customer support that we have that the others don't have, or they have by email, but it's like they can't help you, on the spot, and they don't give a certain turnaround time. And then there's also the Tone Meter AI, which we have and the other features do not have. And again, then it's like on a case by case, because it's the other stuff, it's like one might have this, but they don't have that. So it kind of just depends.
Do they have the financial features? So the ability to upload receipts and keep track of
They
support
do on
payments?
App Close. I'm not positive, to be honest, on Talking Parents. I think there's some kind of expense feature, but I don't know. I know Talking Parents does not have professional access. I know neither have GPS enabled check-ins. I know that App Close requires permission to each and every time they want to use something related to the professional account. I know that AppClose now charges for recorded calls. I know that Talking Parents records every call, which can be problematic. From a legal perspective, I think it's very problematic depending what jurisdiction you're in. Some jurisdictions are one party consent, but some are not. So all of those calls are recorded on there. You don't have the control. Whereas with Our Family Wizard, you have the control. So it might be that you don't want any of them recorded or wouldn't be appropriate, or you want to be able to make that choice on a case by case basis, depending on the situation.
Right. And you did say that there are scholarships available for women who can't afford to subscribe to OFW.
Yeah, so for Our Family Wizard, we do offer a fee waiver program, and that is available for any parent who's being represented pro bono. So that can happen sometimes at the beginning of a legal case where there's been abuse, because maybe even temporarily you were being represented by legal aid. So at that time when you're being represented by legal aid, they can help you to get a fee waiver. It's also for anyone who's been deemed indigent by the court, anybody who has received government assistance in the past 60 days. We do also
Okay.
have a military discount, which is a buy one, get one free. So the military person chooses if they're going to pay or if the other parent's going to pay, and then the other one gets a free subscription.
Okay. And where do they go to get that fee waiver? Is that on the website?
Yeah, they can, if they Googled fee waiver, Our Family Wizard, they'd be able to find it and they can apply directly there on the website.
Okay, that's great. That's awesome. Thank you that y'all do that. And feel free to pop your questions in the chat if you have other legal questions not related to OFW, or if you have OFW related questions about their features, about its features. Feel free to pop those in the chat. We're happy to answer those for you. And then I did want you to talk, Danielle, about I guess it's a newer feature in OFW about the like FaceTiming calls or the recorded phone calls between the non-custodial parent or the abusive parent and the children. Like, what new features are available in OFW? Because I know phone calls between kids and the abusive parent can be so problematic. So what new features are available in OFW that can help protect children and their moms?
Well, what's really nice is that it's all, again, documented within the app. So there can't be that manipulation in terms of whether these calls are taking place or not. It is also a feature within the calling feature that they can consent to calls or turn that consent off. So you want to be real specific about that as well. If there are going to be calls, you can make it so that again, they don't have your phone number. They don't have to have it to be on Our Family Wizard. You can make it so that they can only call you at that time when they're supposed to be calling you. So for example, you can leave the consent off. Let's say that you're supposed to have Wednesday calls, your child is supposed to talk to the other parent, right? You can leave the consent off Monday, Tuesday. Well, I should have started the other way. You can leave the consent off once the call ends on Wednesday. You can turn off the consent and not turn it back on until the following Wednesday, let's say half an hour before the call is supposed to take place. So you don't have to be getting these constant calls, and that's can be really helpful in terms of you setting clear boundaries and like, this is when the call is happening. These are the times I need to turn it on. I don't have to consent to you calling in times outside of that. And then also there's all that information there. So it's going to show if the party's muting the call, if they're turning off their camera, anything like that. And then of course, if it is a recorded call, then you also have 90 days to download that recording, and you can be able to show the court exactly what a call sounds like if there are things that you're concerned about in terms of how your co-parent is speaking with the children, or what they're doing while they're on camera, or um, things they're talking about in the child's presence, things like that.
Right. Does it also create a transcript?
There is the ability to generate a transcript, yes, which can be
Okay.
helpful. Parents like to see that. That I would say is going to be more difficult to enter into evidence than, for example, a recording, just because of the fact that you know, to some extent, AI is used to generate the transcript, and also it's gonna show the names of whoever the device belongs to, which is typically going to be the parent, but it's often actually the child talking. So it can be a little confusing, but it's something that parents do often like to just be able to like read through it sometimes and see what's going on.
Got it. Got it. And then it will show who initiated the call, when that call was made, and how long that call lasted,
Yes.
correct?
So again, you can always show that documentation that, for example, if they're accusing you of not complying with your obligation to make these calls happen. Again, like let's say Wednesday nights at 6:30, you would have this record to be able to show I called at 6:30. And let's say they're manipulative in some way, they don't answer the phone, like you called at 6:30, call again, like that will all show that you tried to call and that, it didn't happen. Then that's kind of on their end because you called.
Okay. So that's a great feature for women who are in situations where they're being accused of, not answering the phone or blocking his number, not giving him his phone calls as he's court ordered to. So that's a great way to organize all of that evidence and information in, one spot that's going to be easy for you to download, versus the circles that you're running through right now in order to try to collect all that information, whether you're having to download or request phone records, from your cell phone provider, or your journaling things, or keeping records in other ways. So I love
Yes.
that feature.
And
What any other?
they can generate
Okay.
reports of the calls, or their connected professional can, and that will include, for example, the information about the consent. So let's say that, they're trying to make it look like you're not making the calls, but you would be able to show that they haven't consented to you calling them. So like you don't have the ability to call. So again, it's just really nice to be able to have all of that documentation there that can easily be generated into a report within the various features.
Yeah. Any other new features that are coming down the road for OFW that viewers might be interested in?
Yeah, we continue to constantly work to evolve. So one of the ones that's coming probably later this year, it's already being tested out, meaning there are some parents who have access to it, is the ability to import your other calendars into Our Family Wizard's calendar so that it would all populate right into Our Family Wizard. Everything will be defaulting as private. So like let's say you have your work calendar, your Google calendar, whatever calendars, those you will be able to import them into Our Family Wizard. Those events will be marked as private, so your co-parent won't see them, but you will be able to see everything all in one spot in the Our Family Wizard calendar. We are also working on an AI tool that's going to allow, like, if someone sends a message on Our Family Wizard, rather than putting it in the calendar, they send a message about, some birthday party that's happening, that it will prompt them, do you want to make this into an event on the calendar? So we're always working on stuff. We're working on some translation stuff for the apps, and those are the things that are on the most immediate horizon.
Thank you. So we have another question. Pamela asks, when is it advisable to create a new thread versus continuing a previous conversation in an existing thread, considering what would be easiest for evidence presentation? I have a response for that. I don't know if you do as
Yeah.
well.
You can go ahead and have your response. If I have anything to add, I will.
Okay. I think it's easiest to have each thread be self-contained, right? So if the thread is about Tommy's soccer game, I think keep everything about Tommy's soccer game in that thread. And then if the next conversation you're having is about a dental appointment, keep everything related to that dental appointment. And I think it's very helpful for me as the attorney to label the subject line of the email in a way that's very clear, right? So I know exactly what it's about and I can go find that, Christmas Eve or dental appointment, etc. If you have a court order or if you have a parenting coordinator that orders you to communicate in OFW a particular way, then you need to comply with your court order or your parenting coordinator's directive on how to communicate in OFW. Um, so they have specific ways they might want you to do that. But I think it's easier just to create individual threads and then respond in those threads as it relates to that particular topic. And I don't know if you have something different to say about that, Danielle.
No, I agree completely. Obviously, if you have a court order or your PC is requiring you to have them all in one thread for some reason or something like that, then you have to comply with that. But I think the more specific you can be and the more narrow you can be, the easier it's going to be for you to keep track, especially if you're self-represented. It's easier if you are represented for your attorney to keep track. So I agree, the topic should be clear. It's not going to be just like today, whatever the topic is about, and it should be staying just on that. And even if it might sometimes seem annoying, even if I had two or three different topics going on at once, I would write three separate messages. So this one is going to be about school. This one is going to be about the dog, like just whatever the topic is, and keep those separate so that everyone can follow exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah. And that you mentioned the dog. I'll bring up one more feature before we close out. You had mentioned that OFW is not just for co-parents, right? It's for pet parents too. So for folks who are sharing custody of a pet or pets, how can folks use OFW to help with destructive relationships and sharing a pet?
Yeah, so we do have people who use it and it's just for pet, like they don't have any children. And then there are some situations where they have children and they have pets. And the main features that they use typically, well, the messaging, certainly, like if there are issues related to the pet, they need to tell them about something going on with the pet, things like that. And then in the info bank, they can upload vet records and things like that. The calendar can be used. They can have a calendar that's like the dog's calendar. Because, like, let's say, for example, they also have kids. So they can have two different calendars within Our Family Wizard if they're not following the same thing. So if the dog, let's say, is following the same with the kids, then they don't need that because it's like kids and dog. They'll just list the dog as one of the kids, right? But if they have a situation, and there are situations like this with kids too, where two of the kids might be on one calendar, a different kid's on a different calendar, they have different parenting time schedules, they can do that. So they could, let's say, maybe even though the kids are on a 2-2-3, the dog is on, week off, let's say. They can have the other calendar that says dog, And same thing for expense. They can name the dog as a child, and then the dog's expenses can be tracked there. Any vet bills and things that they might be seeking reimbursement for, and they can make those payments directly through our Family Wizard Pay as well.
Yeah, that's kind of a neat feature. I never thought of it in that way. And then they can use Our Family Wizard for like alimony payments and potentially property distribution, like distributive awards and things of that nature that are a little more complicated. They need to keep track of, right?
Yes, definitely.
Okay. Yeah, that's awesome. Well, Danielle, thank you so much. And don't tune out yet, ladies, because I have an important announcement about our live for next week. But Danielle, thank you so much for sharing your expertise and giving us this inside look at Our Family Wizard. This is such an important tool for survivors and anyone navigating difficult communication situations with an abusive ex. It can really help turn things around for you in court. To all of you watching, thank you for being here. Remember, we do this live legal Q&A every month on the third Thursday. So mark your calendars now. Our next Q&A will be Thursday, October 16th. And in the spirit of Domestic Violence Awareness Month, because October is Domestic Violence Awareness Month, we will be talking to two attorneys about ways to find affordable or even free legal representation, something that can make all the difference when resources feel out of reach. If you found today helpful, please share this video with another woman who needs it. Don't forget to subscribe to the Live Free Legal YouTube channel and also our Facebook channel, and enjoy our Empower Her community for free legal templates, resources, and ongoing support. Thank you, Danielle, so much for joining us and sharing all the information about OFW with us today. Until next time, remember, you do not have to face this battle alone. You can live free and move into freedom. Thank you, Danielle.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.